Ethan had always believed that trust was the quiet foundation of a good life. Not the loud kind that needed reassurance or constant checking, but the steady kind that lived in routines and promises kept without effort. His marriage to Lena felt like proof of that belief. It wasn't perfect, but it was real warm, affectionate, and built on the assumption that loyalty was never up for negotiation. Their mornings were simple and predictable, and Ethan loved them for that. He woke up early, made coffee, and set 2 mugs on the kitchen counter before Lena even stepped out of the bedroom. She teased him about being boring. He teased her back about sleeping too late. They shared breakfasts at the small table by the window, knees touching, talking about work, laughing about things no one else would find funny. There were inside jokes that had survived years, jokes born from shared moments and quiet understanding. It felt safe, it felt permanent. They talked about the future, often, not in dramatic ways, but in passing comments that revealed how deeply they assumed they'd grow old together. Lena would point out houses they passed on walks and say, "This one would be perfect someday." Ethan would nod and add, "With a backyard for the kids." The word kids never scared him, it excited him. He pictured bedtime stories, weekend routines, a life that slowly expanded but never drifted apart. Ethan trusted Lena completely. It wasn't something he thought about, it was something he lived. He believed loyalty wasn't proven through restrictions or rules, but through choice. If someone wanted to stay, they would. If they didn't, no amount of control would change that. He had never checked her phone, never questioned her friendships. Love, to him, meant freedom, paired with respect. Lena, on the other hand, carried a restlessness she didn't fully understand. She loved Ethan. She loved the safety of their marriage, the way he showed up without needing to be asked. But sometimes that safety felt quiet in a way that unsettled her. She missed the thrill of spontaneity, the rush of being admired by strangers who didn't know her history or expectations. She didn't frame it as dissatisfaction, only as curiosity, as something harmless she never intended to act on. When she mentioned the girls' trip, her excitement was obvious. Her voice lifted, her eyes brightened as she talked about beaches, late nights, and being away from routine for a while. Ethan listened, smiling, genuinely happy for her. He told her she deserved it, that she worked hard, that time away could be good for her. "You'll be fine without me for a week?" she asked, half joking. He laughed. "I'll survive," he said. "Just don't forget to send pictures." There was no suspicion in his tone, no hesitation. He trusted her the same way he trusted the sun to rise every morning. The idea that something could go wrong didn't even occur to him. As the days leading up to the trip passed, Ethan helped her pack. He folded clothes, reminded her about chargers, slipped a handwritten note into her bag without telling her. Lena noticed his care, and smiled, a flicker of guilt brushing past her thoughts before she pushed it away. This was just a trip, nothing more. The morning she left, he walked her to the door, pulled her into a long hug, and told her to have fun. She kissed him, promising to call. He stood there as she walked toward the car, waving until she turned the corner and disappeared from sight. Ethan closed the door and felt nothing but confidence. His life was solid. His marriage was strong. Trust had always been enough. He had no idea that the certainty he stood in that morning was already slipping away and that the life he trusted so completely was about to be destroyed by choices he never saw coming. The first thing Lena noticed when they arrived was how different the air felt, warmer, lighter, as if the rules she lived by back home had loosened the moment her feet touched the sand. The hotel overlooked the ocean, bright and open, nothing like the quiet predictability she'd left behind. Palm trees swayed lazily, music drifted from nearby bars, and everywhere she looked, people seemed carefree, laughing, touching, living only for the moment. The days passed easily. Mornings on the beach, sunglasses and sunblock, long conversations about nothing important at all. Afternoons blurred into cocktails by the pool. By night, the city transformed. Neon lights, crowded clubs, music loud enough to drown out thought. It felt like another world, one where responsibility stayed behind and nobody asked about your life outside the moment. Her friends leaned into it quickly. They joked about freedom, about how rare it was to feel this unaccountable. Someone laughed and said, "You're married, not dead." Another added, "It's just fun, no one's getting hurt." The words were said lightly, but they landed and stayed. Lena didn't argue. She smiled, raised her glass, and told herself they were right. Fun didn't have to mean anything. Attention didn't have to change who she was. At first, it was harmless. Smiles exchanged across a bar. It happened quietly, wrapped in laughter and music, in the illusion that this version of her didn't have to answer to the one waiting at home. The next morning, reality crept in slowly. Regret arrived not as panic, but as denial. She told herself it was a one-time lapse. The trip was ending. Life could return to normal. She would go home, fall back into routine, into safety. Nothing had followed her onto the plane, nothing visible. Anyway, she didn't know yet that paradise doesn't always stay behind. Sometimes, it comes home with you quietly, patiently waiting for the moment it can no longer be ignored. He asked about the trip, the beach, the food, the late nights. Ethan told himself he was imagining things. Suspicion felt disloyal, and he refused to become that kind of man. Days turned into weeks. The house settled back into routine, but something remained off. Lena was quieter, often lost in thought. She went to bed early, woke up restless. When Ethan reached for her at night, she pulled away with soft excuses: headaches, exhaustion, stress. None of them felt dramatic enough to question, yet together they formed a distance he couldn't ignore. He missed her, not just physically, but emotionally. Conversations stayed on the surface. When she looked up, her expression collapsed, fear breaking through the composure she'd been holding together for weeks. "I need to tell you something," she said. The words hit him like cold water. She held up the pregnancy test, hands shaking. 2 lines. Clear. The distance? The tension that had followed her home. Ethan's mind jumped ahead before doubt could catch it. Shock turned into something dangerously close to joy. They had talked about this, imagined it, planned for it someday. He knelt beside her, trying to smile through the surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. She nodded, tears spilling over. "I didn't know how to say it." His heart raced as he did the math without realizing he was doing it. He thought of the nights they'd shared before the trip, the days after. The timing felt off, not impossible, just unclear. He pushed the thought away. "It's okay," he said, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure it out." But the doubt didn't leave. It lingered in the quiet moments, in the pauses between her words, in the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes. Later that night, when he lay awake beside her, numbers crept back into his mind. Dates, weeks, gaps. Hope battled something darker then. For the first time since she'd returned, Ethan allowed himself to ask a question he didn't want the answer to. And as he stared at the ceiling, listening to Lena's uneven breathing, he realized the future he'd just imagined might not belong to him at all. The doctor's office smelled like antiseptic and something faintly floral, a combination that made Ethan feel strangely nauseous. He sat beside Lena, their knees almost touching, though the space between them felt wider than it ever had. She kept her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor as if it might open and swallow her whole. Ethan told himself this appointment would calm his mind. Dates could be confusing. Bodies weren't clocks. He clung to logic the way a drowning man clings to air. Once a professional explained it, everything would settle back into place. The fear that had been quietly growing inside him would finally look foolish. The doctor flipped through the file.com and clinical, unaware that every page turned felt like a countdown. "So," she said gently, "based on the gestational age and the information you've provided," her voice slowed, just slightly. Ethan noticed that before he noticed anything else. She looked up at them, her expression careful, practiced in delivering news that breaks lives into before and after. It's not possible for you to be the biological father. The words landed softly. No dramatic pause, no harsh tone. Just a simple sentence that sucked all the air out of the room. Ethan didn't move. For a second he wasn't even sure he'd heard correctly. His mind tried to rearrange the sentence into something else. Something survivable. Not likely, unlikely, low chance. But the doctor was already continuing, explaining timelines and biology, her voice fading into background noise as a ringing filled his ears. Lena made a sound beside him, not a word. Something small and broken. She covered her face with her hands as her shoulders began to shake. Ethan stared straight ahead. He felt detached from his body, as if he were watching this happen to someone else. His heart didn't race. His hands didn't clench. Everything inside him went eerily still. The certainty he'd built his life on collapsed in a single moment, and there was nothing underneath it to catch him. "I'm sorry," the doctor said, standing up slowly. "I'll give you some privacy." The door closed with a soft click that sounded unbearably loud. Silence rushed in. Lena sobbed openly now, words spilling out between gasps. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. It was just one night. I was drunk. I felt invisible. And She reached for him, desperate. "Please, Ethan, please." He didn't pull away. He didn't reach back either. He turned to look at her, really look at her, and for the first time in years, he didn't recognize the woman sitting beside him. Her face was familiar, her voice the same, but something essential was gone. Or maybe it had never been there in the way he believed. "You let me believe," he said quietly. The calm in his voice startled even him. "You watched me hope," he continued. "You watched me imagine a future that wasn't real." She cried harder, shaking her head. "I was going to tell you, I swear. I just needed time. Time." The word felt cruel. Ethan stood up slowly, his legs heavy, uncooperative. His reflection in the darkened window caught his eye old or hollow, stripped of something he couldn't name yet. Husband, protector, the man who trusted without question. Each label fell away, one by one. He had always believed betrayal would be loud, screaming accusations, slamming doors. He had never imagined it would sound like this: quiet apologies, trembling excuses, and a truth delivered in a calm, professional voice. There was no argument to have, no explanation that could undo what had already been done. He nodded once more to himself, then to her. "I need air," he said. Lena reached for him again, panic flooding her face. "Don't leave. Please." He paused at the door, his hand resting on the handle. For a moment, he thought about the man he had been that morning. The one who still believed love was enough to protect him. The one who thought loyalty was a shared language. That man didn't exist anymore. Without another word, Ethan stepped out into the hallway, the door closing softly behind him, and as he walked away, the truth followed him heavy, undeniable, and impossible to escape. Everything he thought he was had just been taken from him. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table that night, the same place where they used to drink coffee on quiet mornings and talk about nothing and everything. The house felt unfamiliar now, as if it no longer belonged to either of them. The silence between them was heavy, waiting. Lena was the first to speak. Her voice trembled as she started, hesitant, choosing words the way someone chooses steps on unstable ground. She told him about the trip, about the laughter and the drinks, about feeling seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. At first, she minimized it, calling it confusion, calling it a mistake, calling it something that got out of hand. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she said quickly. "I didn't plan it. I wasn't looking for it." Ethan listened without interrupting. His face remained still, but inside, something was unraveling thread by thread. When she realized her excuses weren't enough, her tone changed. The defenses fell apart, replaced by guilt that spilled out uncontrollably. She admitted the flirting hadn't been accidental. The night hadn't been as spontaneous as she wanted it to sound. There were choices, small ones at first, then bigger ones she didn't stop herself from making. "It wasn't just one moment," she whispered. "It was a series of bad decisions." That was when Ethan finally spoke. "Did you think of me?" he asked. The question wasn't angry. It was almost curious, as if he were trying to understand something broken beyond repair. She hesitated. That pause answered him more loudly than any confession could. He asked questions he had never imagined asking the woman he loved. Where it happened, how long it lasted, whether she had gone back to the room knowing exactly what would follow. Each answer felt like another fracture spreading through something that was already shattered. With every truth she revealed, the picture became clearer and uglier. This wasn't an accident born from a single reckless moment. It was planned carelessness, a willingness to risk everything for attention that lasted a night. Ethan felt something inside him collapse then. Not just trust, but identity. He had loved her with the belief that loyalty was mutual, that respect was unspoken and automatic. Realizing she had stepped outside that boundary willingly made the love he still felt clash violently with his sense of self-worth. "I love you," Lena said through tears. "I never stopped." He believed she believed that. But love, he realized, wasn't enough to rewrite reality. It couldn't unmake the choices she'd owned up to. It couldn't make the child his. It couldn't erase the images now etched into his mind. "I could forgive you," Ethan said quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't change what happened." The words settled between them, final and heavy. She reached for his hand. desperate for reassurance, for something to hold on to. He let her touch him, but he felt detached, as if the part of him that used to respond to her had already gone somewhere she couldn't reach. That night, Ethan understood something painful and permanent. Some consequences don't arrive with drama or noise. They arrive with clarity. And once they do, no amount of remorse can send them back. What was broken wasn't just their marriage. It was the future he had trusted without question. The days that followed blurred together, heavy with voices that weren't his. People came with advice, with opinions dressed as concern. Friends spoke carefully, as if choosing the right tone could soften the truth. Family members reminded him of vows, of commitment, of forgiveness as a virtue. Some meant well. Others spoke from fear of scandal, from the discomfort of broken families, from the belief that endurance mattered more than honesty. People make mistakes, one friend told him. Think about the child. Another said, don't throw everything away over one bad decision. Ethan listened to all of it in silence. At night, alone, he replayed their words alongside Lena's apologies. He imagined staying, imagined hospital visits, sleepless nights, first steps that weren't his. He imagined explaining someday why the truth had been hidden, why love had been built on a lie meant to protect appearances. The weight of that future crushed him. Forgiveness, he realized, was being confused with staying would require him to swallow something that would poison him slowly: resentment, doubt, and the quiet knowledge that he had betrayed himself to keep others comfortable. Lena begged him to stay. She promised transparency, therapy, change. She swore she would spend the rest of her life making it up to him. He didn't doubt her desperation. He doubted the cost. I didn't sign up for this, he said one night, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. And I won't pretend it's mine, she cried, accusing him through her tears of cruelty, of abandonment, of choosing pride over love. The words hurt, but they didn't break him. This isn't pride, Ethan replied. It's survival. He understood then that staying wouldn't make him noble. It would make him disappear. He would become a version of himself shaped entirely around someone else's mistake, carrying consequences he never agreed to bear. So he made a choice. He packed his things slowly, deliberately. No shouting, no slammed doors. Every folded shirt felt like a goodbye to the man he used to be. Lena watched from the doorway, stunned, as if she still believed love alone could stop him. At the door, he turned back once. I hope you find peace, he said, but I won't lose myself to give it to you. He walked out into a future that scared him but didn't lie to him. For the first time since the truth came out, his chest felt lighter. The pain was still there, sharp and real, but beneath it was something steadier, clarity. Walking away wasn't an act of hate. It was an act of choosing to live. Life didn't reset after Ethan left. It moved forward slowly, unevenly, as if even time needed to learn how to exist without the lie that had held everything together. Ethan's days became quieter. At first, the silence felt unbearable. He woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, made coffee for 2 out of habit, then poured 1 cup down the sink. Grief came in waves, unexpected, relentless, but it no longer carried confusion. The truth, painful as it was, gave him something solid to stand on. He rebuilt in small ways. New routines, long walks at night, conversations with people who didn't ask him to explain himself. He learned to sit with his pain instead of running from it. He wasn't happy, but he was intact. His reflection no longer looked like a man shrinking to survive. Lena's world moved in the opposite direction. The friends who once laughed beside her grew distant. Some judged silently. Others disappeared completely, uncomfortable with consequences that felt too real. Sympathy faded fast. Regret stayed. She lived with the constant weight of what she'd lost. Ethan's mention became rare, then non-existent. His absence filled every room she entered. The future she once assumed would always be there had closed quietly, without drama, without a chance to argue. The child grew inside her as a living reminder of one night she could never undo. There was no escape from it, no distraction that lasted, no excuse that softened the truth. Every appointment, every kick, every plan for the future came with the knowledge that freedom had demanded a price she hadn't understood at the time. She stopped explaining herself. There was no one left who needed convincing. Silence took the place of all the words she once used to defend herself. In that silence, reality finally settled in. Some losses don't come with second chances. Some lessons arrive too late to save what mattered most. Temporary pleasure, she learned, doesn't fade quietly. It destroys permanent lavand, leaves you to live with the echo. Have you ever believed that trust was unshakable, only to discover how fragile it truly is? Ethan's story is a painful reminder that love alone cannot protect what is built on assumption, not accountability. Freedom without boundaries, even for a moment, can bring consequences that last a lifetime. What feels harmless today can redefine your entire future tomorrow. Self-respect is not cruelty. Walking away doesn't mean you stopped loving. Sometimes, choosing yourself is the only way to survive without losing everything that makes you who you are. Ethan's decision wasn't easy. It left a void. It left pain, but it was necessary. He refused to erase his dignity, even when the cost was unbearable. Now, this story isn't just theirs, it's a mirror for anyone who has faced betrayal, temptation, or the collision of love and truth. Do you believe betrayal should always be forgiven when a child is involved? Would you stay or walk away like Ethan did? Is love stronger than truth? Or is self-respect the real form of love? Comment your opinion below. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes understanding the cost of a single choice can change the way we love and live.